Somewhere in the ancient world, a civilization made a decision that would haunt the human body for the next 3,000 years. They abandoned the toughest grain on earth, the grain that fed armies, that survived famines, that grew in soil where nothing else dared to live. And they replaced it with this. Why did humanity trade the most resilient grain in the world for weak wheat? And more importantly, what are we losing in our bodies every single day because of that trade? Stay with me. Because by the end of this video, you're going to look at the food on your plate very differently. Go back 5,000 years, the Middle East, North Africa, the Horn of Ethiopia. No irrigation systems, no fertilizers, no gene-edited seeds in climate-controlled labs, just brutal, unforgiving land. And yet, people thrived. How? Because they knew something we forgot. They cultivated a grain so ancient, so engineered by nature itself, that it appears in the oldest texts humanity ever produced. Biblical scholars have traced references to it in Ezekiel. Ethiopian farmers have grown it continuously for over 6,000 years without a single break. This grain doesn't ask for perfect conditions. It doesn't need rivers. It doesn't need rain every week. It doesn't need your sympathy. It grows in drought. It grows in heat. It grows in poor, sandy, nearly dead soil, while everything around it withers and dies. Modern agronomists call it the crop of the future. But here's the irony that should stop you cold. Your great-great-great-grandmother already knew that 3,000 years ago. Here is the contrast that modern science cannot explain away. On one side, fields of modern wheat and corn, requiring billions of gallons of water, requiring synthetic nitrogen to survive, depleting topsoil at a rate that experts say gives us 60 harvests left before a global food crisis. On the other side, millet and ancient sorghum, growing where those crops would be dust in 2 weeks, requiring no chemicals, leaving the soil richer than they found it. But the contrast doesn't stop in the ground. It continues inside you. Because here's what modern nutritional science has confirmed. And this is where it gets extraordinary. Iron, magnesium, zinc, B vitamins, fiber, antioxidants. Pearl millet, the ancient grain, contains 3 times more iron than wheat. In populations where it remains a dietary staple, iron deficiency anemia is significantly lower. In populations that switched to refined wheat, anemia is an epidemic. The body that eats this grain reflects the grain itself, resilient, dense, built to withstand pressure. In the book of Ezekiel, chapter 4, verse 9, God instructs the prophet to bake bread from a very specific combination of grains and legumes, a recipe that includes wheat, barley, beans, lentils, millet, and spelt. Biblical scholars have debated this passage for centuries, but nutritionists who've studied it reach the same conclusion, almost in disbelief. That ancient recipe is nutritionally complete. It provides all essential amino acids, complex carbohydrates for sustained energy, plant-based iron, B vitamins, fiber that feeds the gut microbiome. This wasn't random. This wasn't luck. Whoever wrote that recipe thousands of years ago understood something about how the human body works that modern food science is only now beginning to verify. And at the center of that recipe, the grain that survives any drought, millet, teff, sorghum, the ancient grains of East Africa and the Levant, called by historians the forgotten grains, not because they failed, but because we did. We chose convenience. we chose yield per acre. We chose the crop that grew fastest in the best conditions, and we quietly retired the crop that grew in any condition. And our bodies have been paying the price for it ever since. Now, I want to show you exactly what we gave up, because the numbers are not subtle. Per 100 grams of pearl millet versus refined white wheat flour. Iron, millet, 3 milligrams. Wheat flour, 1.2 milligrams. Magnesium, millet, 114 milligrams. Wheat, 22 milligrams. Fiber, millet, 8.5 grams. Wheat, 2.7 grams. Zinc, millet, 1.7 milligrams. Wheat, 0.7 milligrams. Magnesium alone, the mineral involved in over 300 enzymatic processes in the human body, is 5 times more concentrated in millet than in the refined wheat flour most people eat daily. 300 processes: your heart rhythm, your sleep, your blood sugar regulation, your nervous system response to stress, and most people in the modern world are magnesium deficient. Researchers at the Journal of Nutritional Science published findings showing that traditional millet-consuming populations in sub-Saharan Africa showed significantly lower rates of type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular markers compared to populations that had transitioned to refined grain diets. The grain doesn't just survive harsh conditions. It prepares you to survive yours. There's something almost poetic about a plant that refuses to die, that digs its roots deeper when the rain stops, that pulls minerals up from deep in the soil while everything around it gives up. And when you eat it, when you become it, something of that stubbornness enters your cells. Your grandmother's generation didn't have a word for superfood. They just knew this grain kept us standing. Through famines, through wars, through years when the sky forgot to open. We've spent decades chasing the newest supplement, the most exotic berry from the highest altitude rainforest, and all along, the answer was buried in an ancient text, growing in cracked, dry soil, waiting for us to come back. So how do you actually bring this ancient grain back into your life? The good news: millet is one of the most forgiving grains to cook. It has a mild, slightly nutty flavor. It absorbs whatever you cook it with. And unlike wheat, it's naturally gluten-free, making it accessible even to those with sensitivities. 3 ways to start. 1. Replace your morning oatmeal. Cook millet in water or coconut milk. Add cinnamon, a touch of raw honey, and whatever fruit you have. It gives you sustained energy without the blood sugar crash. 2. Use it as a base grain, the way you'd use rice or quinoa. It pairs with roasted vegetables, legumes, or slow-cooked meats. In Ethiopian and West African cuisine, this is the foundation of the entire meal. 3. Millet flour in your baking. Replace up to 50% of your regular flour with millet flour in bread, pancakes, or flatbreads. You'll barely notice the texture difference, but your body will notice everything else. This isn't a diet. This isn't a cleanse. This is a return. We started with a question. Why did humanity trade the most resilient grain in the world for weak wheat? The answer is complicated. Economics, empire, agriculture at industrial scale. But the more important question, the one only you can answer, is this. Now that you know, what will you trade back? The grain survived 6,000 years of drought, famine, and neglect. It'll survive your skepticism, too. If this changed how you think about what's on your plate, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want to go deeper, the next video breaks down 3 more forgotten foods that ancient civilizations ate daily, and modern medicine is now scrambling to study. It's right there when you're ready.